when it comes to starting a Primo program, it's when you get really good, consistent growth. And sometimes you get that false dawn in April where you kind of get some warm weather, but actually the soil temperatures aren't that warm, so it doesn't really get going, I think. But once you get maybe past that and you get a really steady, consistent growth, so the grass clippings in the boxes are, generally pretty good, is a time to think about, right, now's time to start with your Primo program. When you actually get started, I think it's always good practice to go at half rate with the first application and then build it up to full rate from there on in. I think reapplication of Primo Maxx has been a really interesting topic that's been so much discussion about over the last, or since the product's been launched. A lot of people now are moving to using growing degree days as a really good model, and although it's not like exact and gives you an exact answer, it gives you a really good guide into kind of when is a really good time to apply. But also I think nothing beats the kind of the feel and the sensation that a course manager has for understanding his own turf and knowing, and I think from the experience, from using the product, for understanding the rates, then it's really good to be able to just, when you know your turf, you know how long it lasts, you know what fertiliser you're using. I think when you put all those bits and a real good understanding of the agronomy, then you can kind of look for it and work out what's best for your course. Because different courses have different grasses, different constructions, different root zones, and I think that each superintendent needs to really think about how his course works and then integrate the Primo program into that. So I think there's a lot to go into it, but there's good models that will give you a really good base understanding, but I think there's also the superintendent's agronomy that overlays that makes the perfect kind of picture for it. In terms of how those applications get broken down, we've always found that the closer you put the applications together, the better it will work. But I think there's always that balance between what works as a greenkeeper and what works for the plant. And I think you see a lot of people applying fortnightly applications, and I think that's a really nice balance. You can mix your Primo in with your fertiliser program, and a lot of people are on a 14-day spray pattern, and I think it fits really nicely into that. You can go monthly, you can go weekly, and we can provide rates for all of those. But for me, the fortnightly application seems to fit with the turf really well and also fit with the greenkeeper. So the difference between Primo Maxx and Primo Maxx II is very, very little. From a performance point of view, there is no difference between the products. It's really important to us to make sure that we provide the product on the market all of the time. And so what we did, we just made some small changes to the formulation to make sure that we'll always be able to support Primo Maxx in the market for superintendents to use on their golf course. So very little. There are many benefits for Primo Maxx in terms of improving turf quality, but I think there's some key ones I think that are really beneficial to the superintendent. One is it really improves turf density, and with a real nice dense turf that's much better for playability, especially for areas like fairways. But also if you look down here, you can see that this green has recently been renovated. So we've got some holocaust, some overseeding, some sanding, and I think some application of Primo Maxx would really help just improve the density and improve the recovery of the surfaces. You don't want to go too early because we're still quite early in the season, but if you can build it in, it will really help it recover and get good playability. Also, one of the other really good ones is the improvement in rooting. Primo helps redistribute the plant's energy into other areas, into lateral growth and into rooting, and the rootings have real importance in terms of being able to dry out the surfaces and be able to make them better playable, maybe faster green speeds, but also for fairways. I think it's absolutely brilliant for drought tolerance and really helping large areas maximise the water that's available in the root zone. Going into the summer as we are, a lot of superintendents are going to have competitions, whether they be club championships, national, international events. Primo can really help in this area. As we've discussed earlier, the density, the rooting. I think for greens specifically, it can really help with keeping consistent green speed. So that then when you have tournaments that last all day, you're going to get a much closer green speed in the morning and the evening with application of Primo. It regulates the grass growth, and so therefore it doesn't grow as much during the day, and then will really help make sure that the evening putting surfaces are a similar speed to the ones in the morning. And I think that's absolutely fantastic and a real help to the tournament and a real help to the superintendent. So when it comes to Primo, I think when it was initially launched that we were quite prescriptive about rates and what rates are used for different areas. But that's one of the amazing things about the product is that people have kind of taken it to themselves to kind of use different rates and find out what works for them. And so there's no real prescribed rate of it has to be like this. But I think there's a general rule and I think some ideas that we give. And for greens, so we're on greens here, and so for greens generally we're looking at 0.4 litres per hectare per month. And so therefore if you then did fortnightly applications, it will be 0.2 litres per hectare per fortnight, so you have the same total, but you're just splitting the applications. We've talked about greens, but with regards fairways, the use of Primo, you'd need a slightly higher rate as the grass height gets a bit longer. So fairways are normally cut around 10 to 15 millimetres, and so therefore we'd recommend about 0.8 to 1.6 litres a month. And that's very much course specific, grass specific, but within that region I think that's a really good kind of application rate. And again, first application rate, half rate, just to ease it in and then build the programme from there. I think when it comes to stopping the programme and thinking about winding your Primo programme down as you go into the winter is always a really interesting topic. We've seen in some of our research that it's actually really good practice to try and go as late as possible, but there's always that balance between the grass naturally slowing down and thinking, well, as it naturally slows down, there's probably a good time to just kind of filter the programme down and then restart it again in the spring.